So what would you say is mindless about it?
There's nothing inherently mindless about Hanon. I just feel the way it's laid out, the way the exercises work, the instructions they give you in the book all facilitate mindless practice.
Oh, I see. So what do you mean when you say mindless? Like meaningless or unhelpful?
I just think there's a danger in practicing Hanon or other repetitive exercises too much where you become musically disengaged. And then you're practicing in a musically disengaged way, and you can unintentionally take that disconnected mindset onto the bandstand.
I see. So what would you recommend instead? What would you recommend instead?
What would you recommend instead? What would you recommend instead? What would you recommend instead?
A while back I did a video cautioning against using Hanon as a be-all for piano technique. While it has its uses, it can be a dangerous road to mindless practice. But I know there are still students out there learning piano for the first time, trying to get their fingers into shape. And the question is, if I take away Hanon, what do I give them in return? It's all coming up right here. The kind of classic problem with piano is that you play with both of your hands and they're mirror images of each other. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 here and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 here. So when you go to the piano and play something like, say, a melody in octaves, the fingerings are completely different. This creates a bit of a coordination issue when playing. So Chick Corea has talked about these mirror image exercises in a multitude of interviews. They come from an old piano book by Rosamundi. The idea is to work both hands in a very even and precise way by looking at the keyboard in a graphical way rather than a musical way. It sounds wrong, I know, just hear me out. The idea is if you start from the A flat or the D key, you can head in either direction and the keys look the same. Essentially, these two keys are like reflection points for the piano keyboard. So what we do with that information is create these simple little exercises where the hands mirror each other visually and take in the same sensory information, even though the notes are different. Check it out. In the interest of tempering the fingers evenly, first start off with even dynamics. Then accent one note of the exercise, moving that accent when satisfied. Now let's use that same concept to master the fingerings of a melody with both hands. First, let's figure out the fingering for the right hand. Now let's take that exact same fingering and apply it to the left hand with the mirror image in mind. It will sound completely wrong, but try to just focus on the fingering. Now let's do the same thing with the left hand. Now that same fingering with the right hand, all together. Think of this as an extreme measure when you're really having trouble with the fingering of a passage. By mirroring that exact fingering and motion with both hands, it'll really help to drill in those motions. Another classic problem with piano playing is you've got to be able to move one finger without disturbing the rest, like a game of pickup sticks. Finger independence is extremely important, not just for playing certain kinds of passages like Bach fugues, but also for maintaining maximum efficiency. Inefficiency leads to fatigue, which leads to overexerting, which leads to injuries. So here we have some exercises to help with finger independence. Be careful with these exercises as they are somewhat repetitive. Start really slow and stay relaxed. The first exercise goes like this. We counter the repetitive nature of these exercises by gradually moving them up chromatically, a few fingers at a time. Now here's a slightly different version of that exercise with wider intervals to help stretch the fingers. This next exercise comes from Dachniani. It's a bit over the top, but it's meant to build independence between every single pair of fingers. These are an absolute must for piano technique. They're not only good for dexterity and accuracy, but for developing an even tone and getting used to the shapes you'll encounter in actual music. We have a whole video on arpeggios, but for scales, you really want to work on ones other than major, like melodic minor. Augmented. Diminished. Chromatic. Pentatonic. And so forth. Practice beginning and ending scales on notes other than the root, as real music doesn't always start and end on the root. If you're a jazz player, try taking a tune and running scales continuously over the entire tune that make all the chord changes.